Your father destroyed my family. And now you stand there and lecture me about right and wrong? When the son of your family's worst enemy becomes your boss, and your own brother becomes a criminal. Which betrayal cuts deeper? Here's my question for you. If your brother committed a crime to save your family, would you turn him in? Or would you protect him, no matter the cost? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I really want to hear what you'd do. All right, let's begin the story. The early winter air in Busan's Hyundai district cut through like a blade. Morning fog blanketed the alleyways, and seagull shadows drifted slowly over the rooftops of old homes. Young Hyun stopped on her way to work and stared at her family's house. The paint was peeling off the walls, and the last persimmon on the tree by the fence swayed in the wind. A familiar notice was taped to the gate, redevelopment zone pending designation. Hyun slowly tore the paper down and folded it. Her fingertips turned white from the cold. As soon as she opened the door, the smell from the kitchen greeted her. Seaweed soup mixed with the faint scent of gas from the early morning stove. Her mother, Lee Sunja, was stirring a pot. "Mom, they put up another notice about the redevelopment." Sunja didn't turn around. "They can put it up. We'll just take it down. Those people don't know what this house means." Haeun said nothing. She knew the weight of those words too well. On the dining table sat two worn teacups. One had belonged to Hyun's father. The broken handle had been glued back together, but the crack was still visible. Haeun sat down, staring at the cup. "Maybe it's time we just let it go." "Dad, too. What happened here?" Sunja set down her spoon. "Don't say that. Your father's blood is in this house. If you throw that away, you throw away the person." Haeun lowered her head. Her mother's voice was firm, but underneath it was a fear that had been there for years. Ever since the day they lost the money, her mother had been terrified of losing everything else. Even her father's death, it was because of that scam. After that day, her mother began to see money and dignity as the same thing. Morning sunlight slanted across the table. Haeun picked up her work bag. "I've got a meeting today. I'll be late. Don't wait up for dinner." Sunja nodded silently. Her expression was always the same. A mix of worry and hope, like an old shadow cast over her face. The company was a pharmaceutical firm in the heart of the city. The hallway of the research building smelled of disinfectant. Hyun sat in the document room, reviewing clinical reports. She could hear her colleagues moving busily in the background, but her eyes stayed fixed on the graphs on the monitor. Disease metrics, response curves, margins of error. Numbers didn't allow for emotion. That's what she liked about this world. It was clearer than feelings, and responsibility was black and white. Near the end of the workday, her manager spoke up. "Starting next week, we're getting a new executive director. He's overseeing the new product project." Haeun nodded. "His name's Park Do-hyun. Headquarters recruited him. They say he's a real catch." The name sounded oddly familiar for a moment. Park Do-hyun. She'd heard it somewhere before, but the pieces of memory didn't come together easily. On the subway ride home, she stared out at the ocean through the window. The sun was setting, and tiny lights flickered in the darkness. Haeun watched those lights and wondered, what have I been protecting all this time? Is it family, responsibility, or just the habit of holding on? When she arrived home, the alley was quiet. A shadow stood in front of the gate. It was her brother, Yoon-suk. "Haeun, it's been a while." His face looked tired, but he was smiling. He was holding a black briefcase. "Things are wrapping up with the business, so I came down. Thought I'd say hi to Mom?" Hyun wasn't surprised. Her brother's words always started the same way. "All right, let's go in. Mom's probably waiting." When the living room light came on, Sunja rushed out, her face bright. "Yoon-suk, when did you get here? The house feels alive again now that you're back." Yoon-suk held his mother's hand and smiled. "I'm serious this time, Mom. This time, it's really gonna work out." Haeun sensed a strange unease hiding beneath his words, but she kept her mouth shut. In this house, silence had been the language of family for a long time. As the night deepened, wind tapped against the window. The kitchen clock's second hand moved in steady rhythm. Haeun sat in her room and pulled out an old glass bottle. Inside was a single cosmos flower she'd dried and pressed when she was a child. The color had faded, but the shape remained. She held the bottle up to the light. This one hasn't changed. But her own face had. Cold, hardened eyes. Maybe, somewhere in those eyes, the fear her mother had planted still lingered. The next morning, a stranger stood in the company lobby. He wore a black suit and held a stack of documents. The signboard read, New Executive Director Park Do-hyun. Hyun stopped in her tracks. The puzzle pieces in her memory slowly fell into place. That name belonged to the son of the man her mother had hated her entire life. The man behind the scam that destroyed them. Hyun slowly lifted her head. His gaze met hers. You're Jung Hyun, right? A long time ago, back in Busan. She cut him off. I need to get to work. In that moment, a cold wind seemed to slice through the space between them. Back at her desk, Hyun stared at the report in front of her. The numbers were the same, but the balance in her heart was trembling. Maybe this encounter was a sign that old debts were about to resurface. She quietly turned off her monitor. Outside the window, the evening wind was blowing. The city lights were cold, and in the distance, the sound of waves could be faintly heard. Hyun whispered to herself, This time, I won't lose anything. Those words scattered into the sea, and the streetlight at the end of the alley flickered slightly, as if foretelling the change that was coming. Her day was over, but the real story was just beginning. The morning air was crisp. The fluorescent lights in the office, hallway glowed white, and the sound of footsteps echoed in steady rhythm. Jung Hyun arrived at her desk early and began organizing documents. Her hands were calm, but her mind was not. The face of Park Do-hyun, the man she'd run into in the lobby, the day before, kept replaying in her head. His eyes, his low voice, and the look on his face when he recognized her. Hyun turned on her monitor and checked her work emails. At the top was a subject line, New Product Project Meeting led by Executive Director Park Do-hyun. Her fingers paused. Her breathing became shallow. She steadied herself. It's fine. Work is work. Feelings are feelings. The conference room door opened. Do-hyun walked in slowly. Crisp suit, measured speech, expressionless face. He seemed to be leading the meeting as he quietly took his seat. This clinical data is going to be the backbone of the company. Reliability and accuracy are what matter most. His voice was firm and steady. Hyun took notes, avoiding his gaze. But every time his eyes landed on her, her chest trembled slightly. When the meeting ended, everyone left. Hyun stayed behind to organize materials. That's when the door closed, and Do-hyun approached. Miss, Jung, can we talk for a moment? Hyun didn't look up. If it's work-related, please send me an email. It's not. This is personal. She slowly looked at him. If it's about the past, I don't want to hear it. A subtle shadow crossed Do-hyun's expression. I know what my family did. I've wanted to apologize for a long time to the people who were hurt because of my father. Hyun's hand trembled. Your words won't change anything. My family was destroyed because of what happened. He was silent for a moment. I figured you'd say that, but I knew we'd have to face each other eventually. Do-hyun bowed and left the room. Hyun sat in her chair for a long time, unable to say a word. The anger she'd been suppressing rose up again. She remembered the day of her father's funeral, her mother staring up at the sky, unable to speak. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She didn't want to be dragged back into those memories. On her way home, she stopped at a cafe near the beach. Through the glass, the waves rolled in gently. Every time she set down her cup, the table trembled slightly. That vibration felt like the tremor in her heart. She called her mother. Mom, how are you doing these days? I'm fine. Yoonsok's here, so I'm not as lonely. What's he been up to? Says he's preparing for a business venture. He says it's gonna work out this time. Hyun paused. Mom, do you trust him? Yoonsok's my son. No matter what the world says, I have to believe in him. Hyun took a deep breath. She already knew too well how dangerous that kind of faith could be. A few days later, a company-wide notice went out. Certain data access permissions had been restricted. The security department cited suspicious access activity. Hyun was troubled by this. She'd noticed that some of the recent reports had been altered. Someone was tampering with the data. Late that night, while tracing the access logs, a familiar name appeared on the screen. Jung Yoon-seok. Hyun's breath caught. No way. My brother? She quickly closed her laptop. Her hands were shaking. Her family's name was tangled up in the company's internal files. It was connected to the project Do-hyun had just taken over. The next day, Hyun quietly approached Do-hyun. Have you seen the name Jung Yoon-seok flagged in the security logs? Do-hyun looked at her, startled. Why? Is he related to you? Hyun answered briefly. He's my brother. Just check for me, please. He hesitated, then spoke. I can't say much right now, but there's going to be an internal audit soon. If there's something you need to take care of before that. Hyun cut him off. Stop. It might just be a misunderstanding. Maybe, but we need to be sure. As she walked out of the lobby, Haeun's mind was a mess. She didn't know why her brother's name was in those files, or when Do-hyun had found out. But one thing was clear: she couldn't avoid the truth. That night when she arrived home, the living room lights were on. Yoon-suk was on the phone. "That'll be handled by the end of this week. I already sent over the files." Haeun froze at the door. Yoon-suk hung up and turned around. "Did you hear?" "What are you doing, Yoon-suk?" "It's just business. It's connected to your company, too." "What are you talking about?" Yoon-suk smiled. "I'm working on a project with Director Park. If it goes well, we all win." His eyes gleamed with an unsettling light. Haeun took a step back. "He's not who you think he is. Mind your own business. This time, it's for real." Haeun walked into her room without another word. She closed the door and felt like she couldn't breathe. From the other side of the wall, she could hear her mother coughing. She closed her eyes. Every part of her that had tried to protect this family was now shaking. On her desk sat the old glass bottle. Inside, the cosmos flower remained unchanged. But now, that flower no longer symbolized peace. Haeun held the bottle gently in her hand. "This time, I'm going to protect it. I'm going to make things right." Wind blew in from outside. The smell of the sea seeped through the cracks in the window. That smell was familiar and unsettling. Her eyes grew harder. To rebuild a crumbling house, it was time to break someone's silence. The late afternoon sky was ash gray. Pale sunlight filtered through the clouds and slid down the glass. Walls of the hospital building. Sun Young stood in front of the entrance, gripping a small bag in her hand. Her heart beat slowly but unmistakably. She hadn't come here out of simple curiosity. She'd come to confirm an old truth about her father's death. A few days ago, an old friend of her mother's had visited and said, "Your father didn't take his own life. Something happened after that factory accident. You need to know what it was." Those words cracked through her heart like a fissure through an old stone wall. Sun Young stepped inside the hospital. The faint smell of disinfectant stung her nose. At the end of the cold hallway, she stopped in front of the door to the old medical records storage room. She steadied her breath and knocked. A man organizing files looked up. "Can I help you?" "I'd like to see the admission records from the 2003 Samjin machinery explosion. My father's name is Jang Do-hyun." The employee hesitated. "Records like that are restricted. Even for family, you need to go through proper channels." Sun Young pulled out a document and handed it to him. "I'm the legal heir. Even a copy would help." The employee nodded quietly. A moment later, he handed her a worn envelope. Her hands trembled. Inside the envelope were her father's admission records, a few photos from the accident scene, and a single medical certificate. One phrase stopped her breath cold. "Industrial accident cover-up." She gripped the document tightly. An old scene flashed through her mind. The factory engulfed in flames. Her younger self running toward it in panic, her mother's weeping, and the way their family's life changed after that day. She'd always believed it was just an accident, but if the truth had been buried for someone else's gain, that was a crime. As she stepped out of the hospital, the sky darkened. The wind picked up. She pulled out her old cell phone and dialed a number. "Sunbae, you remember what happened to my father, right? That accident." The factory manager's name was Kim Tae-sub, wasn't it? "Sun Young, why are you bringing that up? That's all over." "No, it's not over. Someone hid the truth. And he's still in that position, isn't he?" A sigh came through the phone. "Be careful. If you dig into that, you could get hurt." "I don't care if I do. This time, I'm seeing it through." Her voice was steady. Even in the darkness, her eyes didn't waver. Walking along the riverside near the factory, she looked at the old buildings, the smell of metal shavings, rusted iron gates, and a small memorial stone that read, "In memory of Jang Do-hyun." She knelt in front of it. "Dad, I think I finally understand why you struggled so much." She wiped the dust off the stone with her hand. "Now it's my turn." That night, Sun Young visited an old friend, Min Jae. He was a reporter for the local newspaper. "This isn't just a family matter. Can you run a story on it?" Min Jae scanned the records and frowned. "These are internal company documents. This is risky. Even so, it has to be done. The people who destroyed my father, they need to stop." Her voice carried more conviction than fear. Min Jae thought for a moment, then nodded. "All right, let's gather more evidence. Are you sure you can handle this?" "I have to. It's the only way my father's name gets honored properly." Dawn light crept through the window. The sounds of the city waking up drifted in from a distance. Sun Young took a sip of cold coffee. She knew there was no turning back now. But this time, responsibility outweighed fear. She stood by the window and murmured, "Now the truth has nowhere left to hide." At that moment, the wind-rattled window slammed shut. Her reflection in the glass was firm and somehow lonely. In the distance, a car horn blared, and the darkness of dawn slowly lifted. She was preparing for the next step. She'd opened the first door toward the truth, and beyond that door, another shadow was waiting. But this time, she wasn't running away. She didn't stop walking. And that one step was heralding all the change to come. The fluorescent lights in the security office buzzed faintly. Hyun sat across from the head of internal affairs, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Miss Young, we need to ask you some questions about your brother, Yoon-sok." Her heart sank, but her face remained calm. "What about him?" "He's been accessing restricted clinical trial data. Data that's connected to Director Park's new project." She felt her throat tighten. There must be some mistake. "We don't think so. The access logs are clear. He used credentials that were linked to your account." Her mind raced. Yoon-sok must have gotten into her laptop while she was at work. The passwords she'd written down. The files she'd left open. "I didn't authorize any of that." "We believe you, but we need to know, where is he now?" That night, Haeun returned home. The house was dark. Her mother sat alone in the living room, staring at nothing. "Mom, where's Yoon-sok?" Sunja didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow. "He left. Said he had to finish something. Said it was important." Haeun's chest tightened. "Did he say where he was going?" "No. But he took money. From the drawer. The emergency fund." Haeun closed her eyes. The emergency fund money her mother had been saving for years. Afraid of losing everything again. "How much?" "All of it." The silence that followed was suffocating. Haeun's phone buzzed. It was Do-hyun. "We need to talk. Now." She met him at a quiet cafe near the waterfront. The ocean stretched out beyond the window, dark and restless. Do-hyun didn't waste time. "Your brother sold the data. To a competitor. They're using it to fast-track their own drug approval." Hyun felt the ground shift beneath her. "How do you know?" "Because they approached me first. Offered me money to look the other way. When I refused, they went to him." She couldn't breathe. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I know what it's like to carry someone else's sins." His voice was steady, but there was pain beneath it. "My father destroyed lives. He destroyed your family. I've spent my whole life trying to make up for that. But some debts, they don't get paid. They just get passed down." Haeun stared at him. "So what do? We stop him. Before this gets worse." They traced Yoon-sok to a hotel on the outskirts of the city. Haeun knocked on the door. No answer. She used the spare key her mother had given her years ago. Inside, the room was a mess. Papers scattered everywhere. An open laptop. And Yoon-sok slumped in a chair staring at the wall. "Yoon-sok?" He didn't turn around. "You shouldn't have come." "What did you do?" "What I had to. What everyone does. I tried to survive." His voice cracked. "Do you know what it's like? Being the son who can't fix anything? The son who watches mom cry every night because dad's gone. And the house is falling apart and no one thinks I'm good enough?" Haeun's throat burned. "So you stole? You sold out the company? You sold out me?" "I didn't sell you out. I was trying to save us. By breaking the law?" He finally looked at her. His eyes were red. "The law didn't save Dad. The law didn't save this family. Money did. Power did. And I was finally close to having both." Do-hyun stepped into the room. Yoon-sok stood up startled. You're the one who what?" Do-hyun's voice was cold. "Who tried to stop you? Yes, that was me." Yoon-sok laughed bitterly. "Of course. The great Park Do-hyun, son of the man who destroyed us. And now you get to play hero? I'm not playing anything. I'm trying to do what's right. Right? Your father took everything from us. And now you stand there and lecture me about right and wrong?" Do-hyun didn't flinch. "You're right. My father was a criminal. And I've spent every day since trying to make sure I'm not him. But you," he pointed at Yoon-sok, "you're making the same choice he did. You're choosing to hurt people to save yourself." Hyun stepped between them. "Enough." She turned to her brother. "Yoon-sok, if you don't turn yourself in, they're going to come after Mom. They're going to take the house. Everything. They're going to do that anyway. Not if you make this right." He shook his head. "It's too late." "It's not. Not yet." The next morning, Yoon-sok walked into the police station. Haeun and Do-hyun went with him. He confessed everything. The data theft, the bribery, the sale to the competitor. The officers took him into custody. As they led him away, he looked back at Haeun. "I'm sorry." She nodded. She didn't have words. Outside, the sky was overcast. Rain was coming. Do-hyun stood beside her. "What will you do now?" "I don't know. I need to tell my mom. I need to figure out how to keep the house. I can help with that." She looked at him, surprised. "Why?" "Because I owe your family. And because I think you deserve a chance to rebuild without carrying all this weight." She didn't know what to say. For the first time in years, someone was offering her something without asking for anything in return. "Thank you." He nodded. "It's a start." The courtroom was cold and quiet. Haeun sat in the back row, watching as her brother stood before the judge. The charges were read: data theft, corporate espionage, fraud. Yoon-suk pled guilty. The judge's voice was measured. "Mr. Young, you had opportunities. You had family who cared for you. And yet you chose this path. Why?" Yoon-suk's voice was barely audible. "Because I was afraid. Afraid of being nothing. Afraid of failing. And I thought, if I could just get ahead, just once, everything would be okay." The judge was silent for a moment. "Fear is not an excuse, but I believe in second chances." The sentence came down 3 years, with the possibility of parole. Community service. Restitution to the company. It wasn't light, but it wasn't the end. Afterward, Haeun met her mother outside the courthouse. Sunja's face was drawn, exhausted. "He's my son. I should have seen it. I should have stopped him. Mom, you couldn't have known. I knew he was struggling. I didn't want to believe it." Haeun took her mother's hand. "We're going to be okay. We'll get through this." Sunja looked at her daughter with tired, grateful eyes. "You've always been the strong one. I learned it from you." Weeks passed. The company's internal investigation concluded. Haeun was cleared of any wrongdoing. The competitor was fined heavily and forced to withdraw their product. Do-hyun called her into his office one afternoon. "I wanted to update you. The board's decided to create a new ethics oversight position, and they want you to lead it." Haeun blinked. "Me? You stood up when it mattered. You chose integrity over family loyalty. That's exactly what we need." She didn't know what to say. "I'll think about it. Take your time." As she turned to leave, he spoke again. "Haeun." She stopped. "I know we started off on the wrong foot, but I hope maybe we can move forward. Not as strangers with bad history, but as colleagues. Maybe even friends." She looked at him for a long moment. "I'd like that." That evening, Haeun walked along the beach near her home. The tide was coming in, washing away the footprints in the sand. She thought about her father, about the choices he'd made, the sacrifices. She thought about her brother, about how fear had twisted him into someone she barely recognized, and she thought about herself, about the woman she wanted to be, someone who didn't run from the truth, someone who could forgive without forgetting. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother. "Dinner's ready. Come home." Haeun smiled. Home. It was still standing, still fragile, but still there. She turned and walked back along the shore. The streetlights flickered on as dusk settled over the city. The wind carried the scent of salt and rain, and somewhere in the distance, the sound of waves breaking against the rocks, steady, relentless, eternal. Haeun whispered to the ocean, "We're still here." And the ocean, as always, answered back, not with words, but with the promise that tides always turn, that what is lost can sometimes be found again, and that even the deepest wounds can heal if you give them time. She walked home. The porch light was on. Her mother was waiting. And for the first time in a long time, Haeun felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope?